what's up you guys? This is Rob from The Gay Guy Plays, and today we are back for round 3. Investigating what I hope is the last aspect of physical damage mods when we do it raw. Now, in my last video when addressing the 120% slash damage mod, I had stated that I couldn't 100% give you a conclusion with what happens when you use 4 corrosive projections to completely strip armor in the void. However, like the boss he is, Mogamu got into them Twitter DMs and was like, "Hey Rob, this Mogamu, use Duration Ash with Seiki Shuriken, dumbass." Kidding, he totally didn't say dumbass, but I was like, "Oh, god damn it, I thought it was free, don't make me do it again, I don't want to go back!" But y'all know I gotta do my due diligence, and honestly, in one fell swoop, not only did Mogamu score Ash a couple points in my book, but he also managed to score a couple for physical damage mods. Now, before we move on, I have to give a bit of a premise, as we are testing mod variations specifically for taking down Armored Grineer in the Void, as I believe it's always important to mod for the largest threats in your missions. In this case, it would include Corrupted Heavy Gunners and Corrupted Bombards, as they both share the same flesh type. Keep in mind that this is specifically tailored to the Void, as Bane mods cannot be used on corrupted enemies. If we were talking about standard Grineer troops, Bane mods and Prime Bane mods would take higher priority than physical damage mods. In addition, if you haven't watched the previous video, please do so, as it goes into the general use of physical damage mods, including targets who haven't had their armor stripped. If anyone asks questions that have been answered in that video in the comments below, please link them directly to that. And now, on with the show. So let's do this from the best to worst, starting with slash damage. Now we're taking our fan favorite, the Sancti Tigris, which sports 80% of its damage spread in slashing. This means that the few weapons with more than 80% will reap more benefits. Now let's start off with a strengthened viral build. As you can see, after we strip off the armor, each individual pellet does 4,941 points of damage. Now let's go ahead and switch that up, dropping the 60% status elemental that we use to strengthen viral, and toss in sweeping serration in its place. With this setup, each pellet is now dealing 5,043 points of damage, just barely eking ahead of the full viral by 102 points per pellet. So it's not completely useless after all, it's just extremely situational. Now, of course, this opened up the floodgates for testing, and I just had to take a look at the rest of the physical damage types, with Puncture coming in second. Again, we whip out the Boltor Prime with 90% of its damage spread sitting in Puncture. Just note that there are very few weapons that focus that much of their spread into that specific damage type, so most other Puncture heavy weapons will underperform in comparison. Now again, we start off with the strengthened viral build. This one dealt 1,385 points of damage per shot. However, once we swap out the 60% elemental status mod for the piercing caliber, you'll actually notice a jump to 1,392 points of damage per shot, which honestly isn't half bad for a damage type that underperformed on literally everything else it was put up against in the previous video. Congratulations, in this one specific situation, you do not suck. Now onto the one that does suck. We're back at it again with the Rock de Ceranos that features 90% of its physical damage spread in impact. Much like the Boltor Prime, not many weapons have their spread that focused, meaning that the efficacy of physical damage mods on other impact weapons in general will be greatly reduced. Which kinda sucks, because with a viral build splashed with Crash Course, you'll only be dealing 13,816 points of damage per shot. But if you remove the impact mod and replace it with a 90% fire elemental mod, each shot ends up dealing 14,728 points of damage. Now clearly this one isn't as much of a shock, as we know that Clone Flesh and Corpus Flesh has a resistance towards impact. However, it is funny that the physical damage type that did the best in the previous round of testing suffered the worst in this particular situation. Now, the one thing you may have noticed in the previous build is that I used a 90% heat mod instead of a 60% elemental status mod to strengthen the viral, and that's because after testing, I found that after stripping off armor completely, the heat mod outperformed the elemental status mod used to fuel viral. Now, this part of the video was where I was going to tell you the priority order of what damage mods you should be putting in depending on your weapon's damage type. Then, I realized that it would sound like nothing but verbal vomit, so I figured that I would go ahead and leave you the flowchart in the description box below. Yes, a fucking flowchart. That's how stupidly ridiculous dealing with these physical damage mods are, but I promise I will make it as clear and concise as possible. So, all in all, as you can tell, many of these mods just squeak by damage-wise to give them a second life against corrupted Grineer targets that have had their armor removed. Still very niche, still unusable for general weapons, but for those specific weapons that do have about 75 to 90% of their damage spread focused on one specific physical damage type, they can be a part of a feasible build, in this one very specific instance. Now, I don't ask for this every day, but due to the fact that this video literally ate away at my soul, even though I know it had to be done, do me a huge favor and toss me a thumbs up if this was helpful in any way, shape, or form. Let's aim for the stars and see if we can't break 1,000 likes off on this bitch. Aside from that, don't be surprised if my next video is extra gay. But for now, stay educated as fuck.